A lot of cool drawings would not look that good in real life, and that includes some of the most famous comic book characters in the world. If you only know these Marvel heroes from the movies, you might not recognize their comic book looks.
For the big screen, Clint Barton dropped his pointy mask and traditional uniform for a tactical look. But in 2012, Hawkeye's comic costume was redesigned to look more like the film's version, and less like a scaly purple Wolverine. Both versions of Hawkeye are master marksmen and former agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but movie Hawkeye has a secret civilian family, while comics Hawkeye gets around with romantic relationships with Black Widow and Mockingbird, aka Bobby Morse. Fun fact, Mockingbird later appeared on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but in a completely different relationship. MCU Captain America is undeniably classic Cap, but his costume often changes subtly, like his shield. Originally, it was simply, well, shield-shaped. Soon, it evolved into the frisbee he flings today. In all the ways that count, the MCU's Captain America is almost completely comic faithful. In the movies, Cap's a patriotic mascot before he becomes a hero, even using a shield similar to his early comic appearances. In the comics, Cap goes undercover as a bumbling private who's sent on secret missions. Since then, Comic Cap has lost his powers, regained them, died, undied, and even thought he was a Hydra agent. In the comics, Cap's longtime partner, the Falcon, wears a funky supersuit with enormous red wings and a plunging neckline, resulting in plenty of unprotected bare chest. Movie Falcon is a somewhat more realistic ex-paratrooper in army clothes and a set of highly advanced technological wings. Not a military man, comics Falcon is an ex-criminal who was mentally fused with a falcon by the Red Skull. Like Aquaman, but on land. Falcon has limited control over all birds. If you ever see Falcon hanging around a pack of ostriches, just run. Thor's first appearance in 1962 featured the largest helmet wings you've ever seen, and knee pads that'd make a goalie blush. Movie Thor occasionally wears the helmet and makes the practical choice to cover his arms in armor. And that beard? Comics Odinson generally prefers a clean shave. Interestingly, the movies largely ignore Thor's one-time alter ego, Donald Blake. Originally, Thor suffered amnesia and was trapped in the body of a disabled doctor for years before accidentally rediscovering his hammer. He also fell for Nurse Jane Foster. The MCU created a less revealing costume for its Scarlet Witch. In the comics, she wears a skimpy bodysuit and a weird headdress. Fortunately for Marvel's MPAA rating, her on-screen costume is more autumn fashion collection than Naughty Magician's Assistant. Yeesh. Comics Quicksilver has worn a lot of costumes, ranging from a green with a lightning bolt all the way to blue with a lightning bolt. The movies cleverly and subtly incorporated the pattern, so this is another instance where we're glad they ditched the spandex. Sure, Quicksilver is really fast, that's hard to screw up. He also started out his career as a villain before joining the Avengers, not unlike the MCU's version, though comics Quicksilver doesn't die in his first adventure. Instead, he marries an inhuman woman and has a full life. Let's not even touch Ultimate Quicksilver and his romantic relationship with his sister. Let's leave that for Star Wars, shall we? Ugh. On the page, Vision's an android with a simple design, bright red face, green and yellow costume. It's punctuated with a solar jewel on his forehead. Movie Vision is distinctly more robot-like, covered with mechanical patterns, as though the designers wanted folks to be sure that this guy's a robot. The giant yellow comics collar? Gone. The biggest difference is that while Vision's solar jewel is powerful in the comics, it's nothing like the Infinity Stone his live-action counterpart wears. On the other hand, Vision and Scarlet Witch are an item in both the comics and the movies. Romance. Movie Hulk and Comics Hulk are both big green rage monsters, but MCU Hulk leapfrogged over his original look. When Bruce Banner first transformed, he was gray. Hulk soon turned green, but occasionally turned gray again, switching wildly between smart and stupid depending on the color and whatever the writers wanted to do at that time. Comics Hulk became irradiated during a heroic act, but Movie Hulk turns into a monster because of a failed science experiment. It took years for Comics Hulk to change from a semi-intelligent gray dude into an incoherent green dude. But Hulk's film transformation omitted Hulk's sad decline into madness. He just started out stupid. And that Black Widow romance, you know, the one that came out of nowhere, straight up movie bunk. Prince T'Challa hasn't changed much, usually just some variation on black spandex. Occasionally he makes a mouth hole and sometimes he rocks a cape, necklace of teeth, or gold accoutrements. Movie Panther is much of the same. In the comics, Wakanda wasn't known to the US until it traps the Fantastic Four. But by the time we meet movie Black Panther, his country's already set up diplomatic relations with the rest of the world. During Ant-Man's early comic appearances, he had the spandex and underwear look, and his helmet was a huge silver dome. Solid sci-fi, but bad on the big screen. Fortunately, the movie hero's outfit looks much more like a high-powered fight suit. While both helmets have an ant-like appearance, the MCU version nails it. There's more than one Ant-Man in both the MCU and the comics. Comics Hank Pym hung with the original Avengers, and Scott Lang later stole the suit from Pym to help his family, which should sound familiar. The movies mix and match timelines, Ant-Man, and evil corporations, but it's hard to argue with the awesome results. Since debuting in Civil War, Spidey's accurate supersuit made fans crazy happy. No raised webbing, no energy drink logos, just pure Spider-Man. Still, MCU Spidey has some weird half-belt. What's that about? Like most other comic heroes, Spidey has worn roughly 1 million different costumes since his first appearance. Also known as Grey Iron Man, War Machine's always been a variation on Tony's armor. Movie War Machine is extremely comic accurate, but the Iron Patriot's a different story. In Iron Man 3, Rhodey's armor gets a patriotic paint job, but in the comics, the Iron Patriot is actually Norman Osborn, better known as the Green Goblin. Osborn is, of course, completely insane, and the armor provided an extra layer of protection from public scrutiny. Because how could anyone waving an American flag possibly be evil? Movie Iron Man is damn near perfect. Even though Tony's changed armors more times than most people change their underwear, his film's armors are really comic accurate. And under the armor, Robert Downey Jr. was born for that role. Still, the cocky billionaire from the movies is a caveman compared to comic book Tony, who is recently flying around in his bleeding edge armor, which is conveniently stored inside his body. Not gross at all. Kinda makes that armor suitcase in Iron Man 2 look like a pile of fancy trash.
Back when Hugh Jackman first took the role of Wolverine in 2000's X-Men, it was impressive enough that he accurately captured the essence of everyone's favorite clawed psychopath. It didn't matter much that, at 6'2", Jackman stands a full 11 inches taller than his super short comic book counterpart. Much has already been said about how badly the film's producers screwed up the character. They take him out of his iconic costume, sew his mouth shut, and give him all of the mutant powers they could stuff into one person. The good news, of course, is that it paved the way for 2016's Deadpool, which has broken new ground for faithful comic book adaptations, and for creative use of a unicorn doll in an R-rated movie. While it's not going to win any awards for being clever, the Punisher's costume is pretty memorable for exactly one reason. It has a gigantic white skull on it. So when the Dolph Lundgren starring Punisher movie came out in 1989, what's the one thing the filmmakers decided to omit from the character's look? The gigantic white skull. Fortunately, all the on-screen Punishers since then have let good sense prevail and stuck huge white skull-shaped targets on their chests. Phew. As we've discussed, the producers of 2000's X-Men made some important choices to ensure that their team of mutants would look realistic on film. That meant cutting brightly colored superhero costumes in favor of black leather. Whether or not that was a more believable costume choice is debatable. But there's no question that director Bryan Singer's move to change the look of Mystique is one of the more baffling adaptations in superhero movie history. For some reason, Singer insisted that the villain be covered in lizard scales and walk around naked all day long, despite there being no such corresponding look in the comics. Stranger still, the scales have stuck around from movie to movie and actress to actress, even though it looks truly bizarre and has no real reason to still be, like, a thing.
Before their hit movie came out in 2014, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy were obscure comic characters known only to hardcore fans. Now, Groot, Drax, and Rocket Raccoon are household names. But what many fans may not know is that some of the characters underwent drastic changes in their transition to the big screen. So hold on to your robot legs, because here's what the Guardians of the Galaxy are really like.
Here you go. Oh, I was just kidding about the leg. I just need these two things.
What?
No, I thought it'd be funny. Was it funny?
The movie depicts the meeting and initial team-up of the Guardians of the Galaxy: Star-Lord, Rocket Raccoon, Groot, Gamora, and Drax the Destroyer. But when the original Guardians of the Galaxy team debuted in an issue of Marvel Superheroes in 1969, none of those characters were present. Instead, the Guardians consisted of guys named Vance Astro, Martin X, Charlie 27, and Yondu, the only one who made it into the first movie, and not even as a member of the team. In the comics, Rocket Raccoon looks pretty much the same, but he has a totally different backstory. Instead of a soldier of fortune with a tree sidekick, Rocket originally was the sheriff on a planet designated as an insane asylum. It was in that capacity that he was introduced to Marvel readers when the Incredible Hulk accidentally ended up on his planet. That incident gave Rocket the only sidekick even less articulate than Groot.
Puny God.
In a movie full of memorable lines, Groot has perhaps the most memorable.
I am Groot.
So what?
It's pretty much all he can say. But in his earliest comics appearances, Groot spoke often, and with much foreboding. In Tales to Astonish number 13, he visited Earth to warn humanity that it's doomed, declaring himself the ruler of Planet X, and turning a forest into his own army. Nearly 50 years later, Groot was reintroduced in a way that was much closer to the lovable giant you see on screen. Emphasis on the giant. In comics, he's often closer to 25 feet tall. Portrayed by the almost inhumanly fit MMA fighter Dave Bautista, Drax is a violence machine who doesn't understand the nuance of language and is singularly focused on one goal: avenging the death of his family, who were killed by Ronan the Accuser.
Ronan the Accuser!
You are the one who transmitted the message?
You killed my wife. You killed my daughter.
In the comics, his origin is similar, except it was Thanos who killed both Drax himself and his family before Drax was resurrected by Thanos' own dad in order to exact revenge. Plus, he often rocked a cape, purple pants, and that adorable little swim cap. In the comics, Yondu was a noble alien archer who came from the future in an alternate timeline. In the movies, he's still got the arrow. But now he's ditched the fantasy threads and gone for a decidedly more utilitarian look. He's also now a rough-around-the-edges intergalactic pirate who uses a magic arrow to steal, pillage, and kill. If you think that makes him sound like a blue, kinda evil Hawkeye, you're not entirely wrong. But Yondu's arrow is different because it responds to his commands when he whistles. Which is, pretty cool. The movie version of Peter Quill is equal parts thief, pirate, and salvager, all of which is a far cry from his original style in the comics. A square-jawed, law-abiding space cop with a skin-tight unitard. Though now the de facto leader of the Guardians, he didn't appear in the comics until 1976, 7 years after the Guardians of the Galaxy debuted. But as in the movie, he once did serve time in the prison known as the Kiln. Although in the comics, he was locked up alongside none other than Thanos.
I found something inside of myself. Something incredibly heroic.
Rescued by Thanos after aliens killed her entire race, and trained to become the ultimate assassin. Gamora's tragic backstory from the comics was made even more tragic by director James Gunn, because it's Thanos himself who murders her family in the film version.
You alienated my favorite daughter, Gamora.
But Gunn did go a long way to empower Gamora in another way, redesigning Zoe Saldana's costume so she looks more like a powerful warrior rather than the typical comic book swimsuit model. He's a deeply chilling, hammer-wielding villain bent on victory at any cost in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. But in the comics, he's a bit more complicated, not to mention jacked up. The supreme accuser of the Kree Empire, Ronan is a career military man, fighting wars and delivering judgment according to a strict internal moral code. How complex is he? Not only has he fought alongside Marvel heroes at times, Star-Lord actually once served as his military advisor, and more importantly, his dance partner.
Dance off, bro! Me versus you!
It's on!
Karen Gillan, the actress cast to play Nebula, actually bears a bit of a resemblance to the Nebula of the comics, minus the blue skin, of course. That's why it's a little weird that the filmmakers made her bald to play the role. There are other differences too. In the movie, Nebula is a loyal servant of Ronan the Accuser, but in the comics, she's fought alongside Gamora and against both Ronan and Thanos. Plus, she doesn't share Professor X's hairline, so there's that. In both the comics and the movie, Korath is gruff, intense, and focused on the task at hand: war, combat, and destruction. As a sidekick in the movie, though, we don't really get to see much more of him, including the fact that in the comics he's actually a brilliant scientist. Instead, we mostly have to judge him by his cool fashion makeover. Gone are the goofy hat and blue skin of his comic book look, in favor of Jaimin Unsu and futuristic barrettes and spooky contact lenses. Benicio del Toro makes brief appearances in Thor: The Dark World and Guardians of the Galaxy as the mysterious collector. While the scenes are played mostly for comedy, they also set up Marvel's franchise-wide Infinity Stones plotline. See, there's a reason he's collecting everything cool in the universe, to protect them from Thanos.
He's kind of like Noah from Noah's Ark. He believes that there's going to be a big catastrophe in the galaxy and the whole universe. And he's collecting all these creatures to preserve them somehow.
Acting on that need to preserve, the collector even tried to collect the Avengers in the comics. One thing he collected when he went from page to screen? A bit of a better fashion sense. I mean, look at this guy. Yikes.
Thanos pretty much looks exactly the same in the movies as he did in the comics.
Which is like a sinister wad of grape bubble yum with teeth. In Guardians of the Galaxy, Gamora's desire to stop her adoptive father is a major reason why the team is looking to protect and retrieve the Infinity Stone. But while he's still a genocidal nihilist in the comics, he's also a better dad. Even giving Gamora nice Christmases when she was a little kid with the tree, presents, the whole shebang. He may be trying to destroy all life in the universe, but at least he's into hands-on parenting.
Fine. I'll do it myself.
That's the spirit. You will do it yourself. It's tough being a single dad, you guys.
Black Widow introduced viewers to a ton of Russian superheroes and supervillains straight out of the pages of Marvel Comics. But how do Black Widow and the rest of the cast compare with their comics incarnations? Natalia Alianova Romanov, aka Natasha Romanoff, was created in 1964 as femme fatale Madame Natasha, sent by Khrushchev to seduce and distract Tony Stark. After being foiled by Iron Man, Black Widow goes on the run for months, avoiding a return to Russia and a confrontation with her superiors over her failure. In these early appearances, Natasha's look is definitely more spy and less supervillain. It's when the character returned in June 1966 as a brainwashed supervillain in Avengers issue 29 that she got her first costume, which included fishnet stockings, a cape clasped with a bee around her neck, and a mask. After a few more years, Black Widow decided to reinvent herself as a superhero by going after Spider-Man during one of his J. Jonah Jameson-imposed public menace sprees, no less, and donned the black catsuit so commonly associated with her image in the comics as well as the MCU. So far, Marvel hasn't exactly been adventurous when it comes to Black Widow's look in the MCU. Just about the only part of her appearance to change has been her hair, which has gone through a few different styles and colors, most notably when she went from red-headed to blonde after the events of Captain America: Civil War, which puts her at odds with the United States government and made her a fugitive along with the rest of Cap's crew. Although she's been known to wear office attire or even an evening gown when she's undercover or on assignment, her battle suits throughout the first decade of the franchise have pretty much all been basically black. However, that changes with the Black Widow movie, which gives her a brand new outfit and pulls back the curtain on Natasha's mysterious past prior to joining up with the Avengers. One Black Widow suit we haven't seen in previous MCU films is what's become known in the comics as the tactical suit, first introduced to audiences in the 2010 4-issue miniseries Black Widow: Deadly Origin. It was designed specifically to blend into snowy landscapes, so the suit's utility in the Russian tundra is undeniable, and this new outfit definitely comes in handy during Natasha's 2021 solo outing. In order to find the location of the Red Room, Black Widow and her adoptive sister, Yelena Belova, have to fly into a Russian prison and break out their old adoptive dad, Alexei Shostakov. And with all that snow, the tactical suit totally fits the moment. While she does spend the majority of the movie wearing her traditional black outfit, her time in white during Black Widow is a nod to the character's illustrious comics past. One of the new characters introduced in Black Widow is Yelena Belova, a fellow spy who's a graduate of the infamous Red Room when Natasha was trained as a girl. Essentially, she's another Black Widow. On top of that, she's Natasha's adoptive sister and someone who feels a little hurt about her big sis running off, joining the Avengers, and leaving her behind. Belova's first comic appearance came in Inhumans Volume 2, Issue 5 in 1999. And in the years since, she's co-headlined several miniseries with Natasha under the Black Widow mantle. In comics form, Yelena likes to wear crop tops and spandex, not exactly practical when fighting. In the film, however, Pugh's Yelena dresses more appropriately for combat, and she's definitely got a thing for vests that are full of pockets. Rachel Weisz joins the ranks of Academy Award-winning actors in the MCU by playing Melina Vostokov in the Black Widow movie. Here, Melina is a spy dedicated to the cause of the Red Room. When we first meet her, she's living undercover in America, raising Natasha and Yelena alongside Alexei Shostakov. Later on, we find out that she's a key player in developing the techniques that the villainous Dreykov uses to control the Widows, although she eventually comes to see the error of her ways. In the comics, Vostokov is known as the Iron Maiden, a Russian assassin with deep ties to Natasha. Her costume of choice is a flexible full body armor that increases her strength as well as protecting her from damage. Unfortunately, that awesome outfit doesn't show up in the film. Instead, Melina wears a more traditional Black Widow suit, and while it lacks the intimidating armor of Iron Maiden's comic book attire, it's still a pretty fantastic costume. One of the few characters joining Black Widow is Rick Mason. In the comics, Mason is a freelance mercenary and ex-SHIELD agent. The MCU portrays him somewhat canonically, but one new wrinkle here is that the filmmakers have given him a bit of a romantic sexual tension with Natasha. In the comics, Mason's just a regular shady guy, no supersuit involved, and that's basically the version we get on the screen. Having said that, his ability to wrangle up anything Natasha needs is pretty super in and of itself. One of the more striking characters in Black Widow is Alexei Shostakov, also known as Red Guardian. He's basically the Russian version of Captain America, portrayed by David Harbour. Although there have been multiple Red Guardians throughout Marvel Comics history, Harbour is playing one of the more complicated men to wear the costume. Shostakov's backstory is a mile long, but the highlights include actually being married to Natasha, dying and coming back as a robot and then as a zombie, and even taking over Clint Barton's Ronin identity. In the MCU's Black Widow, Shostakov is Natasha and Yelena's adoptive father, but their history together is similarly marred by betrayal, distrust, and emotional pain.
I couldn't be more proud of you.
You smell really bad.
For a long time, Marvel refused to tell us who was playing the villainous Taskmaster in Black Widow, but the trailers showed the character in action, delivering some pretty sweet action-packed moves. The illustrated version of the Taskmaster has a super complicated backstory. But then, doesn't everyone in Marvel? Tony Masters was a SHIELD agent who was exposed to the Nazi version of the super soldier serum that turned Steve Rogers into Captain America. But in Masters' case, it enhanced his photographic reflexes, giving him the power to instantly learn, mimic, and mirror an opponent's fighting style. That's made him exceptionally difficult to beat as he's torn his way through the Marvel Universe. When it comes to their outfits, the comic book Taskmaster looks a lot like the MCU's villain. The movie character's outfit is faithful to the spirit of the comics, if not slavish in execution. Of course, when it comes to who's wearing the mask, the Marvel Cinematic Universe goes in a completely different direction. Instead of it being Tony Masters mimicking Natasha's moves, this time it's Antonia Dreykov, the daughter of the villain who's running the Red Room, and someone who Natasha's run into before.
Can you wipe out that much red? Dreykov's daughter?